Welcome back to the channel, guys. It seems we're on a regular show roll today, as we're going to be continuing to look at more regular show crashouts. This is part 2 in the series that started a few videos ago, so I'll leave the first one in the description and at the end of the video so that y'all can go and take a look at it, because the response I got from that video was really good and it prompted this one. Some of the entries that were even made in the comments of the first videos made it into this one. So feel free to make more crash out recommendations in the comments, and without any more yapping, let's get on with the video. The first person we're going to be looking at in this video is Cloudy J, or CJ for short. And let me just say that she is the crash out queen. And there are so many times where she just goes full D1 crash out on the people around her. This temper of hers was evident from the very first time that she was introduced in the series in the episode Yes Dude Yes. In this episode, Mordecai plans to ask Margaret out on a date, but when he goes in to ask her, he sees another dude going down on his knees and Margaret saying yes dude yes. Thinking she's just got married to another dude, Mordecai becomes depressed and Rigby attempts to find a partner for him on the Couples Corral website, and it actually works. Mordecai goes on a few dates and eventually meets CJ, and they actually end up having a good time and things start looking positive for Mordecai. And soon after he invites her to the movies and she says yes, he runs into Margaret and her alleged boyfriend, but then runs away before she's able to introduce both of them. This makes him depressed again, and advice comes from the unlikeliest source where Benson tells Mordecai to let Margaret know about his feelings for her. On his way to do this, CJ spots him entering the coffee shop and decides to go and meet him. When Mordecai meets Margaret, she introduces the guy who Mordecai had seen her with as her cousin who just got his leg amputated and replaced with a wooden one. Now that this misunderstanding has been clear, Mordecai makes the terrible mistake of asking Margaret out to the movies, but just as he asks her, CJ enters the coffee shop and sees this, causing her to go full rage mode on them. And now CJ is understandably pissed and heartbroken because she doesn't understand, and now Mordecai is caught between a rock and a hard place, that is CJ and Margaret, and every word that comes out of his mouth just seems to make everything worse until CJ has had enough and becomes a literal cloud of lightning and winds, pushing everybody off their feet and destroying the coffee shop. Things are only relieved when Mordecai gives her a heart-to-heart message about not liking CJ in a romantic way yet. Mordecai ends up losing 2 birds with 1 stone, but hey, at least he got to go to the movie with Margaret's cousin at the end of the episode. I admit, CJ did make some presumptions and shouldn't have jumped to conclusions, but Mordecai asking her out first and then dishing those plans to Margaret as soon as he sees her is messed up on so many levels. So to me, CJ was definitely warranted in becoming a storm and low-key destroying the coffee shop. The next crash out that we're going to be looking at in this video is from the episode Fuzzy Dice, where the gang at the park try to figure out what to get Pops for his birthday. Pops comes in while they're still deliberating on this and tells him that he wants Fuzzy Dice from the Fun Fun Zone as his birthday present. So they get Rigby to dress up as a kid in order to get into the Fun Fun Zone and get a dice. They're told that in order for them to get the dice, they need to win 1 million tickets because they're not able to buy it with actual money. So everybody splits up to play different games in the zone, and after a convincing montage of Mordecai, Rigby, Skips, Fives, and even Muscle Man playing games, they're left with 20,000 more tickets to get the dice, but they only have 1 token. They narrow it down to play Skis Balls, since they consider it to be the only game where they can use the token to get enough tickets if they play well enough, and they actually end up doing it. And when it's time to present the dice to Pops, out of nowhere, the animatronics that were in the background playing music come alive and snatch the dice from them. And it turns out that these animatronics are actually a gang of bank robbers who did a bank heist a decade ago and hid some diamonds within the Fuzzy Dice. They were waiting for the perfect time to steal the dice and run away, and that perfect time happened to be the same night that the guys at the park wanted to get the Fuzzy Dice to surprise Pops. A few hijinks ensues, and everybody ends up at a port. And as the animatronics are trying to make their escape in a speedboat, this is where they busted out their firearms and started a war of bullets, ready to put everybody to sleep, even the FBI. Things unfortunately didn't pan out too well for them, as they also received a rainfall of bullets from the FBI. The FBI also ramped up their use of force, and finally they were able to overcome the Capicola gang, bringing an end to the reign of terror within the city for good, or until the episode's Take Me Amadeus, but that's a conversation for another day. And in terms of whether this rampage was needed or necessary at all, I honestly think it wasn't. And I also think that it didn't even escalate to as bad as it could, because the FBI really came in clutch for Mordecai, Rigby, and the others. I mean, there were so many ways that they could have easily disguised themselves to get the dice from the fun zone. They could have literally waited till nobody was in the shop or nobody was in the fun zone and then slowly made their place to the prize wall and taken the dice and run away. They did not need to go all out like this with the guns and in blazing fury. The next rampage that we're going to be looking at is courtesy of a one-time villain that appeared in Season 3's episode, Trash Bowl. But in that episode, Rigby is watching a show about a band, and the leader of the band says the secret behind his success was changing his name to The Urge. Naturally, Rigby wants to do the same thing, so he looks around the house for 2 random objects and ends up settling for a trash can and a painting of a boat. He then goes on to change his name to Trash Boats. And this was a terrible mistake because it didn't go over well with any of the others at the park, and they take the piss out of Rigby for his terrible choice of name change. This leads to Rigby regretting this and trying to change his name, but it doesn't work out right away since he doesn't have $50. So he ends up trying to deal with it, but man, it is not easy for him. And as Rigby tries to raise $50 for his name, every place he goes to get work rejects him because of how bad the name is. And when all hope seems lost and his face even appears in the newspapers, the unexpected happens when a cyborg appears in front of him while he's crying in the streets. It turns out that in the future, Rigby, or should I say Trash Bowl, is now super famous because of the name change. And The Urge, who was the leader from the band that was mentioned earlier, has fallen off and become irrelevant because nobody cares about him now. So he travels back in time to stop Trash Bowl from changing his name, and this is where he starts crashing the heck out. My man really pulled up with a double-barrel white laser guitar and starts firing at Rigby from the middle of town. He starts destroying objects while Rigby is running for his life, and eventually they reach the park and Mordecai becomes involved in it. The Urge isn't giving up, and he starts destroying the house, so Mordecai and Rigby have to hop into the golf cart and start driving away. And this is where this guy puts on a whole jetpack to catch up on them. The Urge later goes into infrared mode and destroys the forest in pursuit of Mordecai and Rigby. They're able to reach the courthouse a few minutes before it closes, and after barricading the door, Rigby gives the money to the clerk and she slowly but surely effects the change, turning his name back into Rigby. This leads to a chain reaction where other famous people keep coming from the future to destroy other people who made similar name changes that caused them their coolness and their fame. Eventually, the whole courthouse goes up in flames and the episode comes to an end. But in looking at whether this crash out was deserved or necessary, I would have to give it a big no-no, because the Urge literally had no reason to come after Rigby to prevent his name being changed. There were literally 1,000 things that he could have done to maintain his relevancy when he started falling off. He could have used social media, he could have gone on Instagram, he could have dropped better music, he could have stayed in shape, and so on. But his choice to blame Rigby was just super lazy and whiny, and based on this, I feel like his crash out was very undeserved. And that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching up until the end, and like I was saying before, this video was made because of the overwhelmingly positive response I got in the first one. So please show the same love to this and suggest in the comments other moments I can use for a part 3 if that's what you want to see. You can click over here to watch the first regular show Crashouts, and you can also click over here to watch a video on why Benson is always mad and why it's not his fault. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Soon out.